The classic TV series Lost in Space was originally pitched as a sci-fi adventure show by creator Irwin Allen. His concept was based on the 1812 novel Swiss Family Robinson, but he changed the family into space pioneers, set out to colonize a planet in the nearby star system Alpha Centauri. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the first season of the show and find out how Lost in Space went from a pure science fiction adventure series to a sci-fi campy comedy on this episode of Rerun Zone. The Robinson family were sent into space in suspended animation, as their journey was supposed to take over 98 years in the original pilot. But during the trip, they encounter a meteor storm that sends them off course and out of control. Their spaceship crashes on an alien planet, and the crew is considered lost in space. The pilot episode was called No Place to Hide and was a straight science fiction story without the later addition of the infamous Dr. Zachary Smith or the Robinsons' robot designated B9, which was only mentioned occasionally on the show. CBS greenlit the pilot with a $600,000 budget. At the time, it was the most expensive pilot ever made for a TV show. It was basically just a survival story revolving around how the family would struggle from week to week on a strange and barren alien world.
As of this moment, the spacecraft has passed the limits of our galaxy. It's presumed to be hopelessly lost in space.
When CBS executives began laughing at the pilot's preview, Irwin Allen was shocked. Allen was about to leave the room when story editor Anthony Wilson told him to stay because he thought they liked it a lot. He was right. The executives laughed because they knew they had a winner on their hands. They thought that the show needed an antagonist, though, and so the character of Dr. Zachary Smith was added. The role of Dr. Smith was originally written for actor Carroll O'Connor of Archie Bunker fame, but he turned down the role. Then Roger C. Carmel was offered the role, but he didn't want to do a weekly episodic TV show. Finally, the role was offered to Jonathan Harris, who virtually created the character that we are all now familiar with. To save money, the footage was cut up and used from the pilot, and they brought in Jonathan Harris as a straight-up villain. Along with Dr. Smith came the robot, created by Robert Kinoshita, who also designed Robbie the Robot for the movie Forbidden Planet in 1956. The original Robbie the Robot makes a guest appearance in the first season in the Lost in Space episode, War of the Robots.
I ask only to serve you.
Your proposal is very interesting, but come no closer.
The first 5 episodes of Lost in Space were just the pilot episode with brand new scenes inserted that featured Dr. Smith and the robot. That is, except for the second episode titled The Derelict, which was entirely new material. The 4th episode was called There Were Giants in the Earth, the title of which was taken from a Bible quote. When this episode opens, we get a recap of the previous episode where Will is alone at the chariot and being attacked by the robot, as the evil Dr. Smith has programmed the robot to eliminate the Robinsons one by one when they are alone.
Phase 1, when unessential personnel are found alone, destroy.
Once we get into the episode, most of the footage is new, with the addition of many scenes with Dr. Smith. We see the Robinsons doing everyday chores around the ship, like setting up a force field for protection, and planting a vegetable garden that soon becomes out of control when Dr. Smith gets involved. At this point, Smith is still the rather cold-hearted saboteur who wants the Robinsons dead, but we start to see signs of the lazy, sneaky, comical character he would soon become.
Can you lend me a hand for a few minutes?
My dear boy, I would be doing you a disservice if I offered assistance. Little setbacks are good for the young. They build character.
He avoids doing any kind of work, and it's almost painful to watch him as he goes from one scene to the next, making excuses as to why he can't help the Robinsons. In a foreshadowing of what's to come, Smith plants seeds in the planet's soil, which later grow to super large proportions. Professor Robinson and Don head out to retrieve the chariot that was abandoned in the last episode due to an electrical failure. On their way back, they hit some rough spots in the terrain. The shot pans back and we see that they're riding over some very large footprints imprinted in the ground. In the middle of the night, Will decides he's going to fix the robot on his own. And when activated, the robot turns off the force field and leaves to investigate a strange guttural animal sound.
Force field operative must deactivate.
When the robot returns the next day, the Robinsons ignore his warnings about a creature that is 16 meters tall. They probably should have listened.
Does not compute. Does not compute.
What in the world is he talking about?
Humanoid, not 16 meters high. Data inaccurate.
We see John writing in his journal, something we won't see later after the first 5 episodes, but a nice addition here to flesh out his character. When we hit the second half of the episode, things start to heat up, and we're finally treated to scenes from the pilot episode. John and Don head out to the weather station to take readings when they discover that a devastating cold front and blizzard are coming. They see that the temperature will drop 60 degrees within 1 hour and go down to 150 below zero, freezing them all to death. As Don goes to check another instrument, they come across a rather large set of footprints in the ground. This is when we get our first look at the giant Cyclops, and for 1960s special effects, it's pretty impressive. John and Don are trapped in a cave by the Cyclops, while back at the spaceship, they spot the creature through a telescope. Will runs out to help them as the giant tries to grab them. Will then shoots the giant with a ray gun and the giant collapses. After returning to the ship, the Robinsons plan to travel south in the chariot as the weather will freeze them to death if they don't. Dr. Smith refuses to leave, which allows the show to use previously shot footage from the pilot episode without having to explain his absence. As they're loading up the chariot, Penny goes missing, and John uses the jetpack to go looking for her. The special effects again look great for 60s television. John finds Penny and heads back to the chariot just in time for them to leave. They make a stop the first night, and we get a nice family campfire scene, with Will singing and playing an acoustic guitar, and the cast getting some family time together, something we wouldn't be seeing much of in later episodes. When they pick up the journey the next day, they run into an intense lightning storm and have to find a cave for shelter. This is the setup for the next episode, and the last of the pre-shot pilot scenes with a more serious tone. Here they find the ruins of an ancient civilization and are trapped when an earthquake causes a cave-in. The episode ends with the title card to be continued next week, same time, same channel. After the next episode, titled The Hungry Sea, we get a mixed bag of episodes as the show starts to veer away from the more serious tones of the pilot. When Batman becomes a huge hit in mid-season with its campy style, the Lost in Space writers take notice, and when Season 2 hits, the show, now in full color, is also in full campy style, with most episodes now focusing on Smith, Will, and the robot. The first season of Lost in Space has its flaws, but it's still a great season of 1960s sci-fi adventure. One can only wonder what might have been if the execs at CBS had stayed with the straight adventure format for the entire series. Although I can't imagine Lost in Space without Dr. Smith or the robot, I still would have loved to see what they could have done as a straight sci-fi adventure. What are your thoughts? I'd love to know in the comments below. As always, this is Rich from Rerun Zone, signing off.